Never give up till you hear the next Kirblog, especially this one I had on the backlog. Now I am joined by the good KaiserNeko. Don't you know that he's the one who makes this talk complete? He had to be reminded what that was off camera, uneven what that was, so he's a fake Dragon Ball fan. Everybody, you heard it here first. Scott Frerichs is a fake Dragon Ball fan. You can take that to the bank. Nothing?
It's gonna get, it's only gonna get worse from here on out.
I mean, you make also fake Dragon Ball too, and that's what you do, right? That's your thing.
I make fake worse Dragon Ball. Yes.
Welcome everybody. Hello. I am currently at the time of this releasing, I am away at California Republic Comic-Con at a convention for one day, but I wanted to leave behind. I'll put a little video for you all while I was doing that. And I actually intended to do this one months ago, I think back in June of this year, when Dragon Ball Z Kai, the final chapters, finally finished officially airing on American television on Toonami, and I just completely fucking forgot. So this is extremely out of date. However, at the time that this is being uploaded, it is the day after, I guess if... I'm not going to say a landmark in the Dragon Ball franchise history, but it's certainly a special day for the two of us. This is just after Part 3 of the season finale of Dragon Ball Z Abridged has just gone off, and I'm going to even be presumptuous and say that it probably went off as a massive success if the response to the first two parts has been anything to go by.
It's awfully nice of you.
I'm just stating facts. Nonetheless, I am joined by the lovely and talented Mr. Scott Frerichs, KaiserNeko. Say hi, sir.
I might be one of those things. Hello.
You're all those things. Scott is generally most often involved in all of my major, if not him, Mr. Mike Labrie, who's not, because he's a filthy hater on this particular topic. That's not true. He just, he's more understandably jaded about certain things, including what we're going about Dragon Ball, that is, and particularly what we're talking about today. And I believe it or not, we're not talking about Dragon Ball Z Abridged stuff. We're actually talking about Dragon Ball Z Kai.
You just said the same thing twice.
Did I just do that? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, before I say the same thing thrice, and now it's turning into a Kingdom Hearts song. Scott, why don't you? I guess for anybody who maybe, because it is actually been almost a decade since Kai started. Because it was April of 2009 it started airing in Japan. Why don't, for the folks out there listening who maybe don't know, why don't you give them a little quick summation as to what the hell Dragon Ball Kai is and why it exists in the first place?
Hey kids, do you like Dragon Ball, but do you wish it was a little bit shorter and had a better dub? Well, that's what Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Kai or Dragon Ball Z Kai or what the fuck ever you want to call it tries to do. It replaces all of the original music except for when Kenji Yamamuro, the original, or was it Yamamoto?
Look, hold on. You are skipping way the fuck ahead. Hold on. Before we even get into the specifics of that, I'm talking like why it existed in the first place.
Oh, I mean, why it exists?
Oh, yeah.
Why it exists?
Yeah.
Oh, because Toei Animation really likes money.
Also
because their original rendition of Dragon Ball Z had a lot of filler because it was a week-to-week manga that they were adapting, and at some point they were like, man, wouldn't it be nice if we cut out most of that bullshit? And then they cut out most of that bullshit.
Well, it's funny because I only just recently learned about this, but apparently, because right now in Japan there's the Dragon Ball Heroes, kind of mini anime series that is airing over the Heroes. I'm gonna be a fucking superhero. That's the lyrics. So from what I understand, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe they wanted to do a new Dragon Ball, a completely new Dragon Ball anime. This is, of course, well before Super was ever even, I guess, on the table, really. And supposedly Toriyama was like, "No, I don't want to do that." And then
really,
and then they decided, okay, well then let's do Kai instead. And so they had their time slot for it and everything. And then as Scott described in not so many words, it is. What I remember the kind of angle they were pitching was that it was being cut to something more closely akin to the timing of the manga, in terms of and there were certain cases where filler material was unavoidable, they couldn't edit out the existence of Gregory the cricket guy because he's just kind of hardwired into the footage at this point, but if it was a full-on like filler episode or whatever, like it was cut. If it was a filler scene or whatever, they would speed through it very quickly. And often my kind of appeal to people when they like want to get into it or whatever, I'm like, okay, everything from Raditz showing up till Frieza being defeated was like 129 episodes or something in the original DBZ. In Kai, it's an even season of 52 episodes, which is real nice. But actually, Scott, question, because
Yes.
Around the time that Kai was even announced, Team 4-Star was kind of in its like infancy. I mean, you guys were really only into like your first like 1 or 2 years, I think, of doing the show by that point, right?
Yeah, actually, it was about a year in, because it started in 2009, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so about that time.
So what do you remember? I mean, of course, you're as hardcore of a Dragon Ball fan as that. What do you remember about that time when, like, just again, even before the dub stuff was happening, just like, oh, they're like doing like a director's cut version of Dragon Ball Z. Weird.
What I really remember specifically was some of the trailers that were coming out. Mm-hmm. I kind of vaguely remember the announcement of Dragon Ball Kai. Some people thought, oh, is this a new show? And then they were like, it's a remaster of a recut of Dragon Ball Z. And for a little while, some people were like, oh, it's a reanimated version. And the rest of us were like, unlikely.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, once the first trailer came out, everyone kind of noticed almost instantly, wow, this looks way different in terms of color and like, the colors looked brighter. They'd gotten rid of all the noise. The music in the background was really different from what people were used to with the Dragon Ball, both dub and sub. And it was really weird. It was a strange time. The idea that, yeah, in fact, Dragon Ball is getting a full remaster / recut. I remember when the first episode dropped and everyone was freaking out, trying to watch it live via maybe not so legal.
Of course. Programs. Yeah. This is well before, like the heyday of Crunchyroll. I don't even know. Did Crunchyroll exist back then? They might have. I don't even know.
I think they might have,
but it's certainly not in like the form that they have taken at this point at all. But yeah, no, I remember it quite well as well, and I think part of the announcement in terms of like staff and stuff, I think that there was mention that Kenji Yamamoto, who we'll get to that discussion later, but who basically was the guy that had done a whole bunch of composition for the video games, especially around that time. A lot of people were familiar with his work on the Budokai series. Was set to be the BGM artist for the show. Which was, I think, actually exciting to kind of people on both sides of the fandom because, as Mike Vegito EX has often described, Kenji Yamamoto at the time was kind of like the secondary kind of person associated with the sound of Dragon Ball, because of all his work on the video games and everything. And it was exciting. I mean, when I was tuning into it when it first started airing in Japan, and again, not through necessarily legal means. I own the entire series on DVD. Don't hurt me. I remember immediately. Oh, I like this. This is like, it's different, but it still fits the motif of this. And actually it was nice because I had seen certainly bits of DBZ in Japanese, but not the whole thing. So it was really my first time getting to hear, for the most part, the cast with, barring a few changes here and there, do like the entire story from start to finish. Because I've seen all of Kai in Japanese and English, like all the way through. And of course, in your case, you'd seen all of Z in Japanese by that point.
I had seen most of Z. Actually, the funny thing was, I had seen everything up until the later Cell stuff and all of Boo in Japanese. But yeah, for Americans by and large, this was the first time they'd ever be able to encounter the Japanese version because, well, it was kind of the only version of Kai available. Then again, it also came with a lot of its own, things to put off dub fans. Largely, none of the dub music. Faulkner, there was none of that. Even though Kenji Yamamoto is definitely a closer in terms of musical style to Faulkner than he was Kikuchi.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think,
but
just to cut in real quick, by that point, I think also a lot of fans had also seen Dragon Ball. By that point, it all aired on Toonami, and I think that people became a little more accepting of like that sound associated with Dragon Ball. But definitely, I think that Yamamoto's music was a little more, I guess, like accepted by American fans in terms of like it being more cool and modern,
contemporary.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Sorry, carry on. What you were saying?
Yeah. And it was interesting to see a lot of American fans react to this because, let's be honest, American fans in the know, and even some that weren't in the know, in fact, a lot of them, can definitely agree that the pacing of Dragon Ball Z is questionable in a lot of places.
Sure.
And we know why, and it's fine. Like, there's no reason to bash on it, but the idea that they were taking this stuff out was exciting for a lot of people, including me.
Yeah.
Because I've seen Dragon Ball Z 3 times through now.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's... At this point, I could use a fresh... at that point, I could use a fresh take on the show. Like, yes, absolutely. Give it to me with newly done performances and new music and everything cut down. I mean, after we did it.
Well, well, it's
by the way, I'd like to point out that Christopher Sabat and Curtis Arnott / Takahata 101 / Arnappa at the time were on a panel at one point at a convention. Christopher Sabat was on the panel, and Nick went up to him and in his nap and asked, "So, Dragon Ball Z Kai is the original series, but cut down with new music, new voices, and all of the filler taken out?" Yeah, it is. And in his Nappa voice, "Wow, way to be a year late to that party."
Oh, the balls you have on you guys, really, truly, my God. Well, I do want to get to the dub section of this because I mean that's kind of the main point of all this in the long run, really.
Yeah, for the Japanese, it was kind of a big deal to have all the cast come back and redo everything for them. Like, definitely a big deal. But for the Americans, you had something similar to that. Like, oh, hey, all the actors are coming back to redo it. But then you also had a lot of the Japanese fans who didn't like the dub thinking, wait a second, hold on, does this mean we're going to get a good dub? Is that what's happening? Well, and as it turns out...
Well, I'm going to just lead into that. There's one more thing I wanted to say regarding just the inception of Kai was... So, for those of you who also don't know, and this is something else I've learned... most of the shit I've learned from Mike Labrie at this point. So, Dragon Ball is a thing that kind of never really, stopped over here because of the the lag in time in terms of how when it was airing with Dragon Ball, followed by GT, followed by all the movie releases, followed by all the video games that just were never stopping.
GT ended about a year or two after we started getting the dub of the show.
Yeah.
So
So for us, it was never really stopped. But in Japan, and again, if I'm hopefully remembering correctly, I believe it was actually when the first Budokai game, which is just literally called Dragon Ball Z, that series, the Budokai thing is an American, labeling of that series,
which is hilarious.
That was actually kind of marking the revival of Dragon Ball in Japan in terms of Kai wasn't a thing yet, of course. This was years before that, but it was like, hey, we're gonna do a bunch of new merchandise, and I think they had maybe a new home video release or something like that. And then Kai, from what I also understand, was like, hey, let's try to induct a new set of fans into Dragon Ball that maybe didn't grow up with it. And ultimately, from what I gather, it didn't really accomplish much of that in Japan, but in America, on the other hand, Kai was, I think, massively successful, and now we can get into this. I think that was certainly in part to the new direction they went with the dub this time. So kind of this would have been now, I guess, early 2010, maybe even late 2009 or so. No, sorry, it was early 2010. So I distinctly remember, I think, talking about, of course, Mr. Christopher Sabat, who was the voice director for most of the DBZ series, Kai, a lot of video games, all that stuff, and voices Vegeta, Piccolo, Yamcha, 20 million characters. He's master of all things Dragon Ball in the U.S. He, I think, was at a convention in Australia, and was doing some kind of interview, and it was kind of leading into it. Like, I think that like by that point, I think that they had Kai, and they were like, yeah, like we're kind of analyzing exactly what we're going to do with it. I think that by now we're going to kind of go more in the style that we do our current anime. And of course, by this time we had both Full Metal Alchemist series, all these other shows that they had done, with a massively expanded talent pool of people, and by that point, One Piece, of course, so by this point, I mean, One Piece was only a couple years before that in 2007, and I distinctly remember when that announcement happened, not to go into that subject, but that was like people fucking celebrating in the streets because it meant, oh, we're gonna get a good dub of One Piece.
Yeah.
So knowing already, oh, they're going to apply how they handle anime dubs in general now to Dragon Ball, like that alone, knowing how that was going to go was really, really exciting. And then of course we had the initial announcement of the returning cast and some of the replacement cast. I believe in the initial press release they had for it, they revealed that Gohan and Bulma were going to be different, but also Frieza was not going to be different at the time, which was I guess a little bit of a surprise to people at first,
and somewhat controversial, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Because as can largely be agreed upon now, Linda Young's take on Frieza was vastly different from the Japanese. And so for a lot of people, it was a point of contention. While dub fans had grown up with it, it was still rather unfitting to the original inception of the character. So there was a lot of Japanese fans that were, well, to be completely honest with you, pretty not happy to hear about that.
Yeah, and of course, people know what happened later with Frieza, but even in the first episode, they had, to our surprise, a little bit of footage from the Bardock special tossed in there, which was kind of a cool little treat to do that. And in that episode alone, we hear a little bit of Linda as Frieza doing the laugh, insinuating that was going to happen, and we'll get to how that changed too. But also, so Scott, you and I were not in. We were not. Well, okay. I had just done Pokemon at the time. Was my only professional job. But like I was extremely new to the anime business in terms of the voiceover side, and you guys were not yet. But you and I in particular were the people that would we'd snoop around and find out things from various places and through various sources about things going on in the dub world before they were officially announced, I guess you could say.
Mostly just to state our own personal curiosity.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because we were excited. And I remember actually, I mean, I think it's fine to say this now, is this was many years ago. I was at a convention with Chris Sabat, and we were both guesting. I think it was Anime Milwaukee. That's right. So they had just announced that they were going to be doing the dub, and that it was going on to a lot of people's also surprise, not Cartoon Network, but Nicktoons, which was kind of a head turner for fucking everybody on it. I was like, wait, Nickelodeon has Dragon Ball? What the fuck? What alternate universe are we living in? But they had just announced it, and so we were talking about a little bit of how they were going to be handling it. So I had a little bit of an idea about how it was going to go, and even without saying so much about some of the other ideas that they had, and in that conversation I remember mentioning, a lot of people were really, really hoping that Frieza would be voiced by a guy. And, in the most respectful way possible, because there's no offense whatsoever to Linda Young. She seems like a wonderful person, and I love her on Genkai and other roles, and, Baba and all that. But he had mentioned, I didn't cast Linda, and Linda was locked into this position because of what came before her with the Canadian Frieza, and that's the route that they went, etc. And in that conversation, I distinctly remember, I was like, yeah, a lot of people were saying, J. Michael Tatum, and he was like, yeah, I was thinking maybe even, Christopher Ayres, to which I was like, oh my god, that would be amazing. And, lo and behold, not shortly after that. But that was before it started airing. And then when it started airing, it was surreal to see it.
Right.
And I'm even trying to remember like what a lot of the response from people was. I mean, certainly I was keeping up with like, you know, the Kanzenshuu forums, as I'm sure you were to some extent. But what do you?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I remember the response from so I don't pay a lot of attention to the dub only scene by and large because that's not really my jam. You know, but when it comes to the Japanese fans, oh boy, let me tell you, they had a lot of varying responses. Because over on Kanzenshuu, you definitely had some dub fans on there, and their response was mostly, "Hey, you know, this is kind of neat. This, you know, God, so many people hated calling Klinkenbeard as Gohan." Which, you know, if you want my own personal opinion on calling Klinkenbeard as Gohan, better than Stephanie Nadolny, still think we could have gotten a better voice for Gohan. That is my personal opinion, and that is somebody who loves calling Klinkenbeard as an actress unconditionally.
Well, I want to give an opposite view of that, but not until later when we get to the Cell stuff. But yeah, no, there was definitely some confliction from people about like everything on all fronts.
Yeah. And not to mention, you had Monica Rial taking over for Bulma, which again, like, here's the thing: I think Monica Rial is the best Bulma we've ever had. She's a phenomenal actress and just does so much with the character. I can't say, funny enough, early on, like, people had a point that she was a little bit too shrill and kind of, yeah, just a little bit too shrill. She actually, like, chilled out over time and got and found a more natural voice for Bulma. But yeah, early on, dub fans were a little bit conflicted because they're like, hey, some voices are different, and hey, this wasn't in my dub script. And the Japanese fans were like, hey, these voices are different, and they're better, and, you know, they fixed the script for the most part, but, you know, I still don't like this because it's different from what I like.
Well, I do want to say, I want to give some special mention, particularly in the early, like, you know, batch of episodes, some special particular mention to J. Michael Tatum, who I mentioned earlier, and also, of course, took over for Zarbon in the series. J. Michael Tatum wrote the adaptive scripts for, I believe, all of the Saiyan and Frieza stuff. And he, I mean, you know, obviously, by this point, things have very, very much changed with how writing works for Funimation. But at the time, Tatum was one of, like, he still is, I would say, one of Funimation's, like, best adaptive script writers. And like, the thing that I was the happiest about, and people who know my taste in anime, and particularly with dubbed anime, know, I am a huge fan of when it is accurate to the story, but the dialogue is fun. The dialogue has character to it. The dialogue is not just a straight translation of whatever the subtitle track is. Which, and you know, I mean, with Dragon Ball, we have always been blessed with, you know, Steve Simmons, who is, you know, the connoisseur of Dragon Ball as far as subtitlers go, and also Mato as well, Clyde Mandolin, who did Dragon Ball. He's awesome as well. So we've been very spoiled on that front, and that's great. But when it came to like an English language interpretation overall, and not just for Dragon Ball, but in general, I am always a fan of when it's the middle of the road, because if you go too far, you get like, and I'm, you know, sorry to name names, but like Scried, where like Scried is always the show I think of where it's just like this literally just sounds like the subtitle track, or no, even more extreme. I don't know if you ever saw those like short-lived the uncut redubs of Yu-Gi-Oh and Shaman King that 4Kids tried like for 5 seconds. That literally was just the subtitle track with like whatever the dub names were, but no, and also later Patrick Seitz took over I think for the Android stuff and onward up until the end of the Boo stuff. But right away, I was like, I'm in love with this dialogue. I am in love with pretty much all of these performances that, you know, this is 10 years, basically 10 years of experience on top of, you know, all these people that are returning, better choices for all these characters. You know, later we had, like, most of the Ginyu Force were different, Frieza's soldiers were different, and then eventually Frieza himself was different, which we'll get to that in a second. But for me, right away, I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I've got now. And, you know, for me, it was my own little celebration in the streets of like, oh my God, now I can introduce other people to Dragon Ball.
Yeah, that kind of was how I think a lot of fans of both the English and Japanese version were kind of like, oh, holy shit, there's just, this is so much easier to watch, so much easier to consume. But if I had to be honest, we talked a lot about like the dub differences and stuff, but
Sure.
I think it is important to talk about the nature of the actual adaptation, because like one of the things that came off immediately, and this was very noticeable in the Saiyan saga, was that the editing done to cut out a lot of these scenes and match what I believe, I don't know if it was intentional, but it more often than not, they kind of matched this 2 episodes of the original per Kai episode format. Like if they had 2 episodes that were not filler, they would just, basically the first half would be like, say, episode 37, and the second half would be episode 38, which was really interesting because halfway through the episode, you'd have a different animation director. And it's like, whoa, that first half sure did look a lot different than the second.
And of course, in that era where up 8 different studios could be working on the show at a time, with each episode looking distinctly different from each other.
Yeah, not to mention you also have to consider that all these scenes were paced out to be the original. Like they were paced out for the original. They weren't paced and cut and storyboarded to be cut down like this. So while it was really cool to see these things play out differently, there are a lot of scenes that a lot of shots that just feel a little jarring. Which is, it's inescapable due to the nature of the adaptation. Like,
right.
You don't, especially when you have a time frame that you have to work with. Again, 22 minutes. Now make it work. So.
Yeah. I mean, and also, like with you talk about pacing too. I mean, like even like how episodes would end with like, when the narrator comes in and there's like the, the zoom ins and pans of all the characters and stuff. I mean, like, those were set to be the way that they were. And then even if you skip over those, it's still like you have to have an episode end somewhere that feels natural enough. Sometimes even like right when a commercial break would happen and they had the little eye catch, like that would be where like an episode ended from the original footage. And especially if you're like us and the show really well, it's like, oh, I noticed that. It would come up quite often. But on another hand, though, and this, I've seen this firsthand myself through multiple examples. One of the really exciting things for me, and this has been consistent throughout the years that it's been going on, is I have now been able to introduce several people, and not necessarily made them into like big hardcore fans, but just being able to show it to them. People who either didn't grow up with Dragon Ball at all, or saw it like and was aware of it, because you can't not be aware of it to some extent, and thought it was stupid or like just wasn't interested in it or whatever. Kai was the perfect gateway to show people that just missed the boat for whatever number of reasons on Dragon Ball, to get them into Dragon Ball, because of how. And I'm sure this was, in some part the original intention. That's why I'd say, not so much in Japan, but certainly in America, as I was proven to me, like through my own eyes, it was very accessible. It was very simple to, it's not intimidating for people to be like, hey, here's, and that's why I would always sell them with the 52 episode thing, and once they get into it, they would be hooked. Like, I remember, like just a couple examples offhandedly, I had a girlfriend at the time who was an example of that, where, like, she didn't grow up with it. And then I had, like, my neighbor and one of his close friends, who, like, the neighbor had seen DBZ all in Japanese, and they hadn't seen Kai or the new dub, and their other friend, like, hadn't seen the show at all. They were big into, like, Sailor Moon and other anime, but they missed out on Dragon Ball. And there were other examples, too, but, like, those are a couple. And to watch people fall in love with Dragon Ball like it's a new thing was such a fucking wonderful experience for me personally, because, everybody else that I knew who was big into Dragon Ball, like, they for the most part, they all speak the language. The fucking, you and me and Steve Yurko and Mike Labrie and Mike Lucas and, AJ, a lot of those people, like, we all, like, know fucking everything. We know too much about the show. But to see people that, like, their experience, like, oh my god, like, I can't believe this twist about, you know, Trunks, or, oh, like, this Frieza guy, like, he makes my skin crawl, and, like seeing people experience it like it's new. Because I don't have that, like, oh god, like, oh, you don't know anything, god, you know.
Actually, you want to know something sort of funny?
Sure.
Do you know the All Systems Goku?
I've been hearing the tales. I need to listen to them because I am really curious about that.
Yeah, there are a couple guys. I think are they from Giant Bomb?
Maybe.
Yeah, there are a couple of guys who are known for doing a bunch of video game stuff online, and they're doing a podcast where I believe they finished all of Kai up until the end of the Cell Saga. I have not done Boo yet, and they watched the Kai version. So they also did a thing where they were like, hey, so we're going to watch History of Trunks. It's apparently a thing all about Trunks. And they watched it, and they're like, why did everything sound so different and worse? And I'm like, oh, man, yeah, because,
Yeah. And I'm sure they got an earful of, like, explanations as to why.
No, they knew why.
Okay.
One of them did. One of them was like, yeah, we've been watching Kai, which is the redub. This is how it sounded if we'd watched the original. And you could just kind of tell the other guy was like keeping his mouth shut, like, wow, I don't want to be a dick, but ooh.
Yeah, well, no, and here, a funny story, one of those people that I introduced you to, so when, not to skip too far ahead, but when Kai Final Chapter started airing on Toonami, already a while ago by this point, at the time, they were starting to, they had finished watching through all of my box sets, all the way up until the defeat of Cell and everything, and then, okay, we're going to see the Majin Buu stuff now. And the other one who had not seen any of Dragon Ball was so into it now because of their experience with Kai, they were like, oh, I can't even wait, like, for a new episode every week. I just want to, binge through the whole Buu arc. So they, brought out the original dub and just, went through all of the Buu saga and everything that way. And they were like, yeah, I could immediately tell the difference.
Yeah.
Which at least I was glad, like, okay, but at least you understand. And they had, I think, every intention of watching the Kai version later just to, see it in a better interpretation in terms of the English version. But yeah, I mean, but like I said, that and actually that's the reason why I really need to listen to that podcast, because yeah, that is really, really interesting to me to see. And here's another thing, like with the girlfriend that I had at the time, and actually and I think I even told you about this years ago, and this is with zero offense to you guys, but it was also really nice to be able to watch the show through with somebody that had never seen it, and we could also just, like, enjoy it and also make our own jokes, because, and it's fun to do this, so this is not me ripping on people, but, like, a lot of people who look back on the show or whatever, like, some of them have your guys' jokes always in their mind about things, which is great, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, especially because, like, I knew you guys, and I was watching Abridged at the time also, and I was working with you guys a little teeny bit back then on it, not nearly to the extent that I am now, of course, but like, to experience with somebody, and, like, we weren't, like, immediately going to, like, this and that about Ghost Nappa or Super Comic or whatever, what have you. That was nice because it was just like, okay, we can just experience for what it is. I remember distinctly there was this one moment where, like, we were watching it on my TV, and for some reason, I guess, like, my fucking AV cables, yeah, back when we had that, everybody, my AV cables were fucking up or whatever, and, like, Raditz is, like, yelling at Goku. It's, like, the really early episodes. And he's like, what do you think you're doing, Kakarot? Like, what's wrong with you? Or whatever. This is your Saiyan blood, your pride, blah, 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 whatever. And then the picture goes out, and she's just like, what happened to the picture, Kakarot? It's so stupid. But, like, yeah, but that was a lot of fun. And, like, and again, with other friends of mine. Even actually a guy that I met recently through Steve Yurko, who's like, I'm thinking about going back and watching all of DBZ again. It's been a long time. And I'm like, let me just lend you all of my Kai box sets. He's like, oh man, but, like, I don't know, I kind of want to watch it the way that I saw it on Toonami. Like, no, you really don't. Please trust me. I know you have taste now, new friend. Like, heed my call.
Damn.
Oh Lord. I was teasing this for. Let's talk about Frieza for just a moment here.
Yeah, we should talk about Frieza.
Let's talk about Frieza. You want to start?
Yeah, I might as well, considering I might have the most vehement opinion on it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, As was stated before, Linda Young ended up following up Paula Newman, was it? From the Ocean
Pauline
dub that.
Pauline Newston, yeah.
Yeah, Pauline Newston. Yeah, Pauline Newston was Frieza in the Ocean dub. Still Funimation, but I'm saying Ocean because that's the cast.
Yeah.
The Ocean dub of Dragon Ball Z, and Linda Young ended up taking over the role when Funimation moved to their own in-house cast because the idea that Frieza kind of sounded like this old lady was something that had already been ingrained in the show, the dub specifically. And she was Frieza for many years, many years, for approximately 10 years before Kai ever came around. And she become a staple of the franchise. However, once Kai had started, and I think there was a pretty overall negative response to the idea of Linda coming back from people who were otherwise excited about a new, better dub. And as we would find out, for a couple of different reasons, Linda Young ended up getting replaced with Christopher Ayres. Can I say why?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's been talked about publicly.
It's been talked about, yeah. So as it turns out, J. Michael Tatum, the person writing the scripts, had the exact right idea of how to write Frieza, down to a T. The idea was that he's incredibly polite to the point of being condescending, even as he commits just atrocities upon people. He's the kind of guy who tortures you and then asks if he can get you a drink of water. And in this new dub with this new script, as we would find out, according to sources, Linda couldn't keep up with the script. There was a lot being kind of fit into every line. The cadence was very fast and articulate.
Yeah, and packed sentences. I mean, Frieza's dialogue is just like, he speaks in like novelettas in certain cases, which was beautifully constructed and like Scott said, worked perfectly for the character's, actual personification. But yeah, it unfortunately, and the voice is difficult to do that, that interpretation. So all of that lined up together, it wasn't physically working. So
yeah, So as it turns out, they basically cast Christopher Ayres to replace Linda Young, and as it turned out, it was kind of an interesting introduction the first time he showed up, because he was kind of getting used to the voice, and he went a little higher and raspier than he would later. And it was actually kind of jarring at first, because a lot of us when we heard Christopher Ayres is Frieza, a lot of us were expecting something a little deeper and maybe a little less reptilian than he starts out with.
But I remember even I was at some con with Martin, I think. Like I remember, and we were all like huddled around a laptop when like the first upload, I think, to the Nicktoons website of that episode. At the very, very end, they're attacking the little village where Dende and Mori and all them were at. At the very end, like, excellent, now only 3 Dragon Balls remain. We were like, oh, wow, okay, So I think certainly, like, at first glance, but I mean, even that, the very next episode, it was clearly evident, like, oh, this is the character. Finally, the U.S. and, not even just the U.S., English-speaking territories are now finally going to get the real Frieza. Like, in terms of, like, every fiber of his being, like, the actual character of Frieza. Because, and I don't even necessarily blame the voice or the dub or whatever, but, like, just Frieza for a very, very, very long time in the U.S., people didn't like Frieza as a character. He was, I would arguably say, for a long time, certainly in like late 90s, early 2000s, Frieza was probably like the least liked of like the big three between Boo and Cell and him, as far as American fans go. And I firmly believe, and not just because of Kai, but also now certainly because of, with the movie and a lot of the newer stuff they've done with him just in general, that's been really fun. Now people are like, oh, dude, I am fucking all about Frieza, like 24/7. Bring on more Frieza, please, yeah. Which is great because now in retrospect, from what I've learned, even before Kai, mostly thanks to the Kanzenshuu podcast guys, now I'm like, oh, Frieza's the best of the big three. he's the most interesting overall. Which, so now the fact that everybody loves him and he's getting all this new attention between the movies and Super and the video games and all that, now it's like, yes, please, yes, more of that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And even on the note of Christopher Ayres, I mean, again, this is, I think, fine to say now. It was kind of the worst kept secret in the world. It got around through one way or another through various sources and places and people. Certainly neither of us. What are you talking about? It was exciting for people. Once the news dropped, it was really interesting to see. And I think it did one. And actually, I'll say this too. You can or cannot take credit. I think also that at the very minimum, it opened up the idea of Frieza having a different interpretation and maybe something closer to the Japanese, that you guys went the route that you did with Martin in your show. Especially considering, and then I'm sure you guys have probably talked about this in panels and shit, but what was originally planned for Frieza?
Yeah, actually, originally we had planned, and much to Mike Lepre's chagrin, I remember that conversation, and we were originally planning on using Lenny Pator, who plays our Vegeta and our Krillin, Piccolo, Mr. Popo. We were originally going to use him doing a Linda Young impression because he can actually do a legitimately decent impression of Linda Young's Frieza. But yeah, we ended up going with Martin after some audition stuff. So
yeah, which was funny because the story of that was he was auditioning for Captain Ginyu, did a Frieza voice in the audition scene that he came up with, and I remember being in the Skype call with you when that happened, and I was like, Scott, that's your Frieza. Like right there. Which I think lasted, it led itself much better because I think that in retrospective, if the joke with Frieza in your show was him being an impression of, the dub voice that people already were not super happy with, I think that it probably wouldn't have stood the test of time with people, going back and enjoying even your guys' version of the show. So I think it was certainly the better decision in the long run. And again, I think that it also opened up people's minds a little bit to, maybe Frieza wasn't exactly like the way I remembered him being. And then, with Kai, it's like, this is the character. Oh, okay, now we got this. This is nice. So there was that. So then, we moved on. We had the Android stuff through the 2010s and early 2011s and stuff. And, had everybody back for that. Well, almost everybody back for that. A couple changes. 19 and 18 were different. 18 is back to being the original actress again. And much to some people's surprise, Damian Clark actually came back for Cell. Around that time, Travis Willingham was, replacing the voice of Cell for a lot of the video games and things. But Damian was actually down to come back and amazingly reprise everything for Cell in the whole series.
Spectacularly.
Oh, yeah. And then we had a little hiccup that happened. Right at the finish line of what was going to be the end. So we had Kai was, to people's surprise, ending prematurely. It was ending at the Cell arc. And at the time, there was no sign of anything happening with the Majin Buu stuff. And this would be the case for, I think, about 2 or 3 years. There would be nothing indicated of that at all. Toei was ready to move on to something else. They had Toriko, which was meant to be their next big sensation based on a Shonen Jump property, and it was a show. Toriko was a show, but yeah. So it was finishing up its original 99 episode run, and actually, the final episode, I believe, was relegated only to DVD content because of, I believe there was, and Scott helped me out here. I think that there was maybe one of the disasters that happened, not to go into the grim territory.
Yeah,
here, of course,
there was a I think it was an earthquake.
Yeah. So there was a delay, and then the final episode, which is the Trunks returning to the future to save the world episode, was relegated to a DVD special final episode. Yeah. But that was it, and 2 episodes before the show was over.
As it turns out, Kenji Yamamoto, The man who was who had provided the score for not just Kai, but several video games and songs within Dragon Ball Z, was caught being a filthy plagiarist.
Like, I mean, you know, and God, I don't need that could be a whole nother, like, you know, discussion video. And like, I mean, Kanzenshi's written a massive article about it. Geekdom 101 has done a whole video about it. And it's an interesting subject. I would definitely recommend you look into it if you don't know what we're talking about. I mean, this guy had been working on the franchise for years. I mean, since
almost the beginning of the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, particulars, if any of you guys, you know, even if you haven't played them, I mean, like, if you know any of the Butoden, Super Butoden series games from back in the day, if you downloaded any of those MIDIs on, you know, sites like that, or the Budokai games, you know, he did Battle Power Unlimited in DBZ, the Super Saiyan Trunks transformation song, a lot of the movie themes that were sung by Hironobu Kageyama, you know, and just countless songs ripped off from various sources. Some not so mainstream, like, you know,
propaganda.
You know, obscure German synth pop bands. To I don't know, James Cameron's Avatar original soundtrack.
Yeah, Danny Elfman, Pink Floyd,
Stradivarius, you know. But and it was crazy because, you know, meanwhile in the United States, because I mean Japan, they've got 2 episodes left when this controversy is revealed, and actually, Scott, question, because I know we talked about this forever ago. Do we know if it was because somebody in like the U.S. was like, whoa, hold the fucking phone here for a minute, that sounds like something that is not owned by this company or whatever, like, because by that point it was airing on Nicktoons and I think on the CW 4Kids block on Saturday morning.
Yeah, it was. I would not be surprised if, by and large, the only reason that they were able to get away with it for the longest time was that the nobody in Japan noticed, but someone in America did, and they were like, yeah, what? So that is literally just the war song from Avatar. How?
Yeah. That's the Terminator theme. Like, there's nobody can deny this. Yeah.
Terminator Salvation specifically.
Yeah, which
had
like
just
new.
come out.
Yeah. So meanwhile, you know, because what this means for Kai specifically, not to go on exclusively the Yamamoto thing, but like, you know, so it's airing on 2 different places on American television. The show is almost over in Japan. So they only had to, for that broadcast, go back in and rescore the last 2 episodes with Kikuchi Music, the original artist that did the music for DBZ in Japan, except massively limited due to, Chala Headchala and, you know, We Got a Power and all the, like, opening and ending songs, of which there's a billion, you know, arrangements of those tunes as the BGM. We can't use any of those tracks because those songs aren't in Kai, because Kai has Dragon Soul as the opening and the different endings and all that, so we can't do that.
And even worse, really, they only had access to a limited amount of their library that wasn't, say, We Got a Power or Chala Headchala related, because there were many incidental pieces that they no longer had. Like, they didn't have a lot. Like, there's, you wouldn't believe this, but there are a lot of small tunes in there, which are just incidental small pieces that never were released to the public or were archived.
Yeah. So meanwhile, the show is airing in 2 places on American television. I think they had to halt on Nicktoons, I think, for a little while when the Android stuff was just starting to kick off. And I even remember, I think Saba did another interview on maybe 918 The Fan or something, like talking a little bit about that threw a wrench into some plans a little bit. You know, and then the Saiyan stuff was just airing on Kids WB. Further confusing people with, oh my god, Blue Popo, oh, Kai is censored. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Shut up. Oh god. You know.
Oh my god, yeah. No, there was. Let me just say, nothing was more infuriating than seeing people say, "Man, Kai are so censored. Look at what they did in this scene." And I'm like, okay, that's from Nicktoons.
Yeah.
I mean, Kai was actually censored. I'd like to point that out there.
Yeah.
Kai was censored in comparison to its original, especially very early on, where they censored some of the violence.
Not very much. Not super much of it. I mean, like
Yeah.
the hole in Raditz's chest is like the major one, obviously.
Yeah, although they still kept, say, the hole through Yamcha or Dodoria's hole through one of the Namekians. Like, that violence was still kept. You still see Mori get his neck snapped. Like, a lot of that stuff that was otherwise unacceptable is still there.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, like, you know, and probably the one bit of censorship that I'm like, yes, thank you for, is not showing Goku and Gohan baby dicks anymore, because for the love of Christ, like, just please stop with that. So, you know, but yeah, no, I mean, some people, I think probably just people looking to piss on it, you know, unnecessarily, were like using, I mean, because even the Nicktoons version, I like. The thing I was happiest about was it was still just like the script was the story was the story. Like the story was what it was supposed to be. The visuals, even though they were altered somewhat, it wasn't that drastic. CW's version, I mean, I can't even believe they got it. Like that was surreal to me to have it on there. And they had to make further edits, like the Blue Popo stuff, and like, you know, re-recording lines. There's some.
Yeah. One of the worst examples of that was there's a line where you know, Vegeta says to Nappa, let's let him, when he's referring to the dead bodies of Goku's friends, and he's like, let him clean this trash off the battlefield. And in the CW version, first of all, they changed the line to let him clean his friends out the battlefield. But they didn't just change the line, they re-recorded the line and didn't have Christopher Sabat to re-record it. They had Schemmel. So in the most jarring line, it's let him clean his friends of the battlefield.
Yeah, like very noticeably just in the middle of the line. Which, from what I understand, later he was like, hey, you can just like get them. Like, I'll hook you guys up with that. Seriously, please. Like, can we not do this? This is silly. Like, you know,
they could record. Yeah. They have a studio. They can record from fucking Dallas. Don't fucking do this.
Actually, that's crazy, you know, because I'm remembering now. I mean, this is so long ago. Schemmel was still living in New York at the time, and actually, because I remember, and I think this is okay to say now too. I think that they had like all these deadlines and everything. He actually recorded, I think, the last bits of the original run up until when Cell was defeated at DuArt, where they do Pokemon. Because I remember Tom Wayland, who was directing Pokemon at the time, he was joking about, like, my only perception of DBZ right now, based on me recording Schemmel for these episodes, these few episodes or whatever, was, and I'm like, okay, well, I see what's going on here with that. So even but the fact that Schemmel was still living in New York, that goes to show how long ago even that was at the time. But nonetheless, so they had to go. Basically, they had to go back and scramble to re-edit all of these episodes, all 99 of the original 99 only episodes of Kai's original run, with a very limited selection of Kikuchi's OST from original DBZ. And now I have a collector's item. I have the original versions of the first 4 Kai box sets that have Yamamoto's music, because all later reproductions of the music, it's good
luck.
It's the replacement score. And box sets 5 through 8 of the original run, I think you can only get them with the replacement score. Some people have, for their own purposes, painstakingly gone in and rescored the episodes, which, bravo to you guys for doing that, I guess. Please support the official release, though, of course. But, and then in what seemed like, in such a, like, aw kind of thing, it was silenced. Kai just gone. In this kind of bummer thing to end on a note of that. I mean, but I will say, and I was holding on to this, regarding Colleen Klinkenbeard, who I think you would agree by the time, we had the last bits of Gohan stuff knocked it out of the fucking park. Listen, let me put it this way. I have had to do some in my time since Kai started, now that I've gotten to work on anime stuff myself. Colleen, believe it or not, is the person that I look to in terms of, like, I want to emulate this big, crazy-ass Scream.
Hey, look. If you, all I'm going to say is, Colin Klingenbeard is an amazing actress, and her early Gohan stuff was fantastic. I'm just not a fan of hers like older Gohan, like that. And that's not against her either, because again, she's a very good actress. She just was vocally not the type I'd pick for Gohan.
I still to this day, for fun, I go and I watch the Super Saiyan 2. I mean, related to your recent guys' interpretation of that with the song and everything, which was very cool. I will still go back and rewatch the Super Saiyan 2 transformation. Just that and the final push to kill Cell with Goku and the Goku Gohan father son Kamehameha. That last little like push that he does to finish him off. I will go back and listen to those for shits, and every time I'm like, that's my goal, is to do, and not Sabbath, not Schemmel, not Sonny, not Eric, even though they're all amazing too, and I love all of their work, of course, but like Colleen is the one that I allude to whenever I'm like, I want to do a Scream, that fucking metal someday in something, somehow. And then I had to do Godzilla too, and I blew my fucking voice out trying to do that, so, but, so... anyway, so that's actually the end of the run of Kai, but then of course we had the little period of silence with kind of Dragon Ball in general, because there was nothing new with the movies yet. There was nothing new with really there were just some video games, which is whatever. And we were all like, is the Boo saga stuff ever gonna happen? Like, what's going on with that? And remind me, was it that somebody in the Japanese cast let it slip that they were... Oh, was it Mayumi Tanaka even, I think, that let slip, like, yeah, we're doing the Boo episodes?
I would not be surprised at all if it were Mayumi Tanaka. I can't remember specifically, but that sounds right.
Because I think if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was even yes. Now I remember. Yeah, there was a comment about that regarding it's kind of a shame that it's actually not even going to be broadcasting in Japan, and I was like, what? Oh, huh, okay.
Which is hilarious, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, well, because of course, and here's another conversation worth happening. I remember, I think in some conversation I had with Sabbath was like, I think at the time it was clear that it was going to be ending, and like there was some talk about, well, I don't know, maybe we could figure something out about the Boo episodes or whatever, who knows. And as it turned out, because I think, as far as I'm concerned, because Kai did so well internationally, there was this, idea of, hey, you know what? Oh, well, and also in tandem with, Toriko didn't necessarily do so hot once it took over that,
Yeah, but we'll talk about that in a second, because that's interesting.
Well, let's talk about that. That's what I'm up to, so.
Okay, well, yeah, so it wasn't going to be in Japan, and then it was.
Yeah.
But why? One must ask.
Yes.
That's because Toriko sucked, and nobody wanted to watch it. So it went down the toilet, and they were wondering, okay, shit, what do? We don't have anything to fill this slot. We really need to fill this slot. Wait a second, we've been working on the international version of the Boo Saga for Dragon Ball. How about we just take that, cut it down to 52 episodes, have a whole 2-season slot? Damn, we've done it again!
Yeah, and it proved to be the perfect time waster, although it... certainly caused a little bit of interesting thing going on. So, once again, worst kept secret in the world. Not due to anybody in particular's fault. It was just, very unclear what was going on with it. So, as it turned out, Funimation was, of course, recording the English dub of what was to be called internationally Dragon Ball Z Kai: The Final Chapters, which was everything from the Great Saiyaman stuff up until the end of Z with the, Oob and all that, everything.
They obviously skipped over the Other World Tournament.
Yeah, and some other stuff as well. So that was kind of already letting slip, and I remember even like talking to some people, being like, "Hey, so what's going on with that?" And like nobody really ever had an answer, like about what the hell was happening. And then, and I mean, you and I were theorizing about this. It was, in terms of like, well, there's, they're airing it, and then they have their home release they want to put out, and there does become that issue of not wanting people to reverse import stuff sometimes, because pricing can be different. And Japan, from what I understand, does Japan still do like the 3 or 4 episode of pop DVD thing, or have they changed that structure now comparatively?
Oh no, they're still stupid expensive.
Yeah.
That's not changing anytime soon. Is how they make the money.
Yeah, and it's such a shame because in retrospect, and I remember I think I even said this to Eric Vale or something one time. No, it would have been amazing if they aired the English dub of the Kai Boo episodes same day as the Japanese broadcast. Maybe could have been worked out. I mean, as far as I know, I think they had like almost all of them like in the can and good to go by that point. I think that actually could have been really, really great to do that. And we ultimately didn't get, the final chapters episodes, of course, until, now I think a year and a half ago at this point when they started airing both them and Super dubbed at the same time. We have the Dragon Ball Power Hour on Toonami now, which is great. And and the DBZ Kai episodes also have been continuing to air on Toonami. It was so funny. Finally, after all this time, it wound up back on Toonami again. Kind of as far as I'm concerned, where it belongs. And to see this kind of proper dubbed version of Dragon Ball on Toonami for the audience that had grown up to be that have matured by that point and wanting to see it again with all the hype, with all the new stuff happening with the movies and everything.
It's kind of interesting because it wasn't the first time Toonami had gotten a dub of Dragon Ball that was uncut, which I find interesting because back in the day, did they air all of Dragon Ball Z uncut, or did they only air like the first?
I believe and actually, it wasn't even Toonami. It was actually I think it was at like a time slot that was just before when Adult Swim would start. It was like the kind of cusp of it. But they were airing what they were labeling at the time as the Ultimate Uncut Edition episodes, which were the redub of the Saiyan and Namek stuff. Basically everything that Canada had done. That was not released with the Funimation cast by that point. They did not air all of like what was on like the Orange Bricks, for instance. That was only on the home release. But yeah, no, they were airing all those first 2 seasons worth of episodes on Cartoon Network, but it was not. And actually, because I think even when they were airing those, I think that Toonami might have been like done. I forget if maybe it was moved to Saturdays. And it was still kid-oriented stuff or whatever. I don't remember exactly, but they were airing those episodes like Monday to Friday, weekly, and yeah. But no, for Toonami, yeah, this was a big landmark, and then we finally got all this time later. We got the Boo Kai episodes, of course, and that was great to see too. That was like surreal, like because I had been that. I would say personally, the Frieza saga. Sorry, not even the Frieza saga. The Frieza fight, and all of the Boo stuff. In my mind, those are the 2 sections of the series that needed the Kaiification treatment, probably more than anything else in the entire show.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Of course, I mean, I love Boo, I love Teen Gohan, I love Babidi, I love Videl, I love like the characters of that era. I know the Boo saga is kind of like half and half with people, especially these days, but it's still special to me. I was happy to see them get to properly do it. Kyle was over the moon, happy to be able to go back and redo all of Gohan again as well, which was great. And and then and that was kind of the end of everything. And then of course, the other kind of perfect lead-in was as soon as the last episode of the Boo Kai episode aired in Japan. Back in 2015 now, we got Dragon Ball Super.
Which was a surprise. Which was a surprise to most people, although, when you look back on it, it's like, yeah, of course they did.
Sure.
Why wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, after the 2 movies were fucking doing gangbusters, it's like, oh, this is the time. Everybody's watching Dragon Ball. Everybody's into this franchise again. Here we go. Okay. And now Super's over, which is insane to think that already that many years have passed and we had 100 and how many episodes of Super, I think? 116 or something like that? I don't even remember.
How many was it? Gosh, now I'm trying to remember.
It was well over 100, definitely, but we're in like the 80s or 90s now in terms of the dub stuff airing.
Yeah, I think it was 131.
Yeah, yeah. So Scott, I guess we're at the hour mark now. That we've gone through the whole history of everything. I think looking back, what is it that you personally think that Kai has done for Dragon Ball? What is the mark that Kai kind of left on, I guess, the franchise as a whole, would you say?
Well, I'm not sure what it did for the Japanese so much. I'd have to talk with somebody who knows a little bit more about that. But for the American audiences, it first of all gave people who would otherwise just not watch the show an avenue to enjoy it, both because it had a better dub and because it was more easy to consume. Mm-hmm. You get told, "Oh yeah, watch this. It's 190 episodes," or 290 if you're going to watch all the Buu Saga. But back then, let's just say, Cell is all you could get. Mm-hmm. But still, that's 195 episodes. Have fun watching that. Well, that sounds terrible. Oh, okay. Well, here's one that's 98 episodes. How's that? Well, that's definitely easier to consume. Mm-hmm. And with the dub just giving these new performances, better performances. Mm-hmm. It was just so much easier to enjoy, and not to mention they were much more faithful to the original. Yeah. So you have a lot of people just getting back into Dragon Ball, and that was great for me. A lot of people talk about like, oh man, look what you've done with the show. And I'm like, what I've done with the show, if anything, is hopefully gotten more people into watching it, because I wouldn't do this if I didn't freaking love Dragon Ball, man. Mm-hmm. So just to see that other people were getting into it because of Kai, yeah, that's a plus. There's I don't care what anybody says about Kai, if they like it, if they don't like it, but if anybody can, I don't think anyone could deny that Kai got more people into the show. And I would argue gave them a great way to watch it. And personally, for me, if I'm going to be honest with you, the preferable way. I can't watch Z anymore. But then again, I'm a 31-year-old with many important things to do.
Yeah, I mean, once in a while, if I want to watch this scene or whatever, in the original.
Certain big scenes I have to watch in the original, because if I had to be honest with you, okay, so here's the trade-off. Mm-hmm. While I love the score that plays in Trunks versus Frieza, mm-hmm. Man, Battle Power Unlimited's classic. Yeah. And if we're talking about the Super Saiyan 2 transformation, Kai couldn't touch that no matter what score it had, Yamamoto's or Kikuchi's. Yeah. There are just some scenes in the original Z that just destroy the Kai version. Yeah. But if you're talking about an overall experience that's easier to consume and gives you your bang for your buck, yeah, you can watch Kai and really get into it.
And if you want to kick back and watch the driving test episode, you can do that. That's a nice little separate chunk all to itself.
I'm kind of sad that Funimation didn't just go out of their way to give us we're just gonna do this one. Yeah. We're just gonna redo this episode, and here you go.
Yeah. I mean, no, really, what I wished above all else, I wanted so desperately for the TV specials to get the Kai treatment.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. Not to say too much, but man, would it have been nice to get the movies redone like that? Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah. Well, but what's nice is, and actually, I'll lead into this with my thoughts, and I think what it did the most, especially for the U.S. audience. I think now more than ever, I used Frieza as the biggest example, but he's not the only one. I think now more than ever, the fandom of Dragon Ball as a whole, everybody is generally on the same page about who these characters are. The other big example that I can point to, I'm glad that I'm thinking about this now instead of missing it, is, for better or worse, and let's face it, objectively it's for worse, everybody remembers Ally to Good, Nightmare to You. And Schemmel himself has said, when he was recording that in 1990, what the fuck ever it was back then, he was like, this doesn't feel like the character. Having only recorded a little bit of him by that point, he's like, this doesn't feel like Goku to me, because it's not. I'm sorry to everybody out there who's got it in your fucking, senior quote on your yearbook, and yes, that's a thing I've seen, but that's not Goku. Yep. Now, and even not to go too far into the everybody, oh, Goku's a shitty character or whatever. But like, even with that said, people know who Goku is now. People have a better understanding of who Vegeta is now. People have a better understanding of who Gohan is now. Like, all of these things I think mattered so much. Like, because, you know, nostalgia and, oh, I remember this and that, oh, that funny line or whatever. It's like, I get it, guys, but like, those weren't the characters. If anything, even arguably more so than just the performances, the writing. Now we have a better idea of who the cast of Dragon Ball Z really was. So now, with the movies, because this is going forward, even though we didn't get, you know, redubs of absolutely everything with the Kai style and the, you know, kind of level of quality that we're at generally with everything, but everything new moving forward, the video games, the 2 new movies, the upcoming movie, all of Super, like now it is to that level of quality in terms of writing, performances, production, everything. Everybody knows what they're doing now. And, you know, not just on the actual production side, but in the fandom side, people get like, oh, yeah, that's what Goku would do. Yeah, that's what Vegeta would do. That's what Frieza would do in that situation, you know, and not their perception of, you know, whatever it is they took away from the Toonami on TV, watered down for 5-year-olds, you know, special thanks to fucking Barry Watson, versions of these characters, you know, and I know that for some people, you know, that's like, oh, but my childhood. I'm like, all right, well, you know, but your childhood was incorrect. Sorry. Such a dick. But seriously, I think that's the biggest positive thing that Kai had done, is that it opened up people's minds, it changed people's perceptions, and it educated. Much like with what meeting you and like listening to the Consenshu podcast and doing research on like the real show has done for me even before Kai was a thing. I think that Kai has kind of done that for a lot of people in English-speaking territories. And, you know, for all the shit that happened with it, for all the bumps it was going through and all the weird things with, you know, delays and music shit and, you know, this and that or whatever, like, I think that overall it was a good step, a good tie over, and a good opening up to all the really, really awesome things that we have now. And Dragon Ball is fucking back and bigger than ever, all across everything. Look at all the milestones we got going on in different sections, you know. Kai finishes up airing on American TV. The Tournament of Power arc has just started. You guys finished this, you know, the Cell stuff. You know, we have a new movie coming out. A Dragon Ball game is at EVO and being taken seriously.
Sean Schemmel's finally calling Goku by his full name.
So yeah, I mean, it's a good time to be a Dragon Ball fan. I would say is my closing statement on that. And with that, I think that is going to end things. So Scott, thank you so much for.
Are we just not going to talk about the Boo Saga? Not going to talk about that?
What?
I don't know. Maybe the fact that it's kind of rough.
Well, it's certainly got a very nice green tint to it.
Yeah, it looks like Dragon Ball Kai is always greener on the other side. Scott. You can really tell that Dragon Ball is an evergreen series.
Scott, you are most unkind.
How dare you? How fucking absolutely dare you?
Anyway, that's all I'll say about that. Scott, thank you for taking time to join today. I mean, you have already finished working on all of episode 60, all 3 parts. Painstakingly, you spent time on doing.
Yes, it is premiered and gone over incredibly well. I'm not sitting here literally looking at the premiere timeline, hoping to get this finished.
Well, way to pull back the fucking curtain. Then you could have lied, and I would have believed you. Excuse me. Well, I hope people, you know, have been enjoying that. I certainly did. I was very happy to be a little bit of a help and part of it in whatever way that I could. I'm sad that my fucking hand gave out before I could finish up the rest of the stuff I was supposed to do for you.
It's okay, baby. We managed.
I know. Honestly, my biggest accomplishment on that, more so than anything, is that I hooked these gentlemen up with, and shout out to the amazingly talented Paulo Cuevas, who did the vocals for the Unmei no Hi English cover that was in part 1.
Yes, a terrific singer.
Yeah, and big Dragon Ball fan too. Look him up. He's done lots of like really badass like metal covers of like basically all the openings and endings and shit. And yeah, Ume no Hi, the cover was great. The episode was great. Great all around. Thank you so much for working so hard on it and shit. I guess, would it be safe enough? I mean, you guys have some things that you are, revealing in the stream that has already happened by this point.
Oh, yeah, no, this is going up. Yeah, hey, you know how Kai had a Boo Saga? Was so weak, bitches!
I don't know what's being planned on being said in the stream or whatever, so I don't know how much you can and can't say safely, but...
All I can say is, it's going to be different. It's going to be different from how we've been doing it. It's still going to be like the structure is going to be the same. The medium we've been doing it's going to be the same, but it's going to be a little bit different because now after the Cell stuff, let me put it to you this way: Cell Saga was our love letter to Dragon Ball. Mm-hmm. Like just we love you, Dragon Ball. Thank you so much. The Boo Saga, yeah, man, this is like a fucking victory lap. Yeah. Like this is going to be us just having fun. This is going to be us like, you know what? Everything, like, the Boo Saga is a farce. It's just a fucking farce. I mean, Vegeta's atonement is pretty cool, and there's some cool shit going on. But by and large, it's just a lot of goofy bullshit that just kind of culminates in bigger goofy bullshit. So, yeah, we're gonna do some fun stuff with Boo.
There's a lot of ridiculous shit that's going to happen. So, a lot of ridiculous shit that you guys could do. And I will say, we've teased about this before, but now I'll finally at least tease more but vehemently. You people will shit your pants when you find out who's voicing Boo.
Yep.
Yeah. It's not me, by the way.
No, it's not.
No, it's not, before people get that idea. Anyway, and I'm being serious. Anyway, and that said, I guess, anything, Team 4-Star, there's so much shit going on with you guys. Do you want to plug anything else in particular, for y'all, while you got the stage?
Oh, well, let me see. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z Abridged, and you haven't checked out any of our other shows, definitely give Hellsing Ultimate Abridged a chance, a look, because I'll be honest with you, I think it's our funniest stuff. And that's a guy whose Dragon Ball Z Abridged is his favorite project. And check out Final Fantasy VII Machine Abridged if you're into machinima and stuff like that. It's got Justin Briner as Cloud. He's the Deku from the Boku My Hero Academia.
Boku My Hero. That's the first time I've heard that. Gaming channel as well.
Yes, we also have a gaming channel, TFS Gaming. We have a lot of gaming stuff there. I am doing a Spider-Man playthrough with Lanny.
Tune in for that. You guys will also, I'm assuming, be doing DBCember again this year, as per the usual.
I mean, I hope so.
I hope so. I like it. Sometimes I go back and rewatch those. They're fun.
Also, stay tuned for the epilogue. The epilogue for episode 60, which is going to be all the trunk stuff. Which, guess what? It's going to be an episode I wrote all on my own.
Oh. Well, and it's the You Show starring you featuring Corinne, so.
Also, as I was going to say, what was I going to say? Check out our dub of the film Hells, which will be out sometime soon.
Featuring a whole bunch of lovely friends, talented folks as well from that, so look forward. And actually, we will both be at Anime Weekend Atlanta next weekend in lovely Atlanta, Georgia, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Yup.
Yeah, maybe I can fucking sneak my way onto the 18-plus panel or something and be belligerent. I don't know yet, but I'll definitely be there to make fun of you at least. You guys have a 18-plus panel, a regular panel. You got a booth, I'm assuming, as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come by, be our booth, babe.
All the works. I'll be doing a whole bunch of panels and shit, including I've got a big, cool, really cool announcement that I'm going to be doing. That's all I'll say. I think you guys will be excited about it. So I hope we'll see some of you guys listening to this at AWA. Please check out Team 4-Star, and Scott, where can also people follow you on stuff?
You can follow me on Twitter at KaiserNeko. I also do Twitch streams at twitch.tv/KaiserNeko. And obviously, Team 4-Star.
Yes. And you know where to find me. I mean, you're here listening to this on this, so thanks. Anyway, thanks everybody. And you know what? In the comments below, tell us your stories, memories, critiques, favorite moments, favorite things about Dragon Ball Kai specifically. Any kind of things maybe we didn't go over that you were, big into, things that you liked, things you would have liked to see, things that you were happy that you saw. etc. Let us know, and also if you have any, if you have compliments for Scott and the work that he did, go leave a comment on fucking DBZ Abridged episode 60. But that'll do it. That's it for me. That's it for Scott. We will catch you all later. Bye bye. Ba 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 da da. Ba da bum.